Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Go-To Food Podcast, brought to you by Swelldale, whole carcass artisan butchers who supply the finest meat from the Yorkshire Dales to some of Britain's top restaurants. And to you too. Swelldale are synonymous with whole carcass nose-to-tail butchery and produce meat that's interesting to cook, flavoursome to eat, and shows why native breeds deserve our support and promotion. So click the link in the description below to go straight to their online shop, where you can try some of their extraordinary treats for yourself, including the creations that Ben has made for today's wonderful guest. Just the legend Phil Howard, having worked for the holy trinity of the Roux Brothers, Simon Hopkinson, and then Marco. He went on to open the critically acclaimed 2 Michelin Stars The Square for 25 years, followed by his latest Michelin Star haunt, Elystan Street. And don't forget his other Michelin Star location, Kitchen W8, amongst another 1,000 Michelin Star restaurants he's sort of involved with through his protégés, many of who we've had on the podcast.
We have, yeah.
And we'll speak about that later. But Phil, you must be absolutely knackered. I mean, I know you've just got a lovely tan coming back from the Seychelles, so maybe you feel a bit better.
Yeah, hey, I know. So life is always somehow in the fast lane, even in the Seychelles. But yeah, no, listen, always busy, and but that's how I like it, really.
It's wonderful to have you. I mean, we were at Aaron Potter, one of your latest protégés, restaurant Wildflowers. Have you been down there yet? He's nicked your vinaigrette. I'm gonna throw him under the bus.
Mrs. H's vinaigrette. I don't know what he calls it, but Mrs. H's vinaigrette, which is my beloved.
Hold on, has he admitted to that?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's one of those things that kind of you see Mrs. H's dressing knocking around lots of restaurants. Yeah. It is really good. It's a very simple thing.
Is it top secret? I mean, can you give us at least some of the ingredients?
I'm not allowed to profiteer from it until she's gone north.
Okay, fair enough.
And so one of these days, I'm gonna be alongside Paul Newman's.
Yeah, nice. Okay, right. Yeah.
It's just really delicious, and it's funny because you look at it and you think actually it's got mustard powder instead of Dijon mustard, and mustard powder I think is kind of, I don't know. It's just not something that you see around much anymore.
No,
Coleman's mustard powder. No, it's not. No. And sugar.
Okay.
That's the other. Otherwise, it's just bog standard. It's mustard, vinegar, sugar, salt, pepper, garlic, oil.
Yeah.
So it's nothing particularly funky about it, but it's the mustard powder and lashings of sugar. It's very sweet and soury.
He also said that you nail out mise en place faster than anyone in the kitchen he's ever met, and that you're still sort of cooking behind the stoves quite a lot. Are you still in? I mean, what's the day-to-day life like now for the wonderful?
I'm not in there as much as I used to be. The last kind of 6 months, really, I've taken a back seat, partly because I'm heading towards 60, and there's only so many proper play years left. I still feel very young between the ears, and the corpse is mostly holding up. So I kind of want to play while I can. Yeah. But also I've got a good team in there, and the kind of numbers that we do these days, it's all quite stable. So right now, while the going's good, I'm enjoying being in the kitchen less. Certainly in the evenings and the weekends. COVID kind of. If there's one thing that came out of COVID for me from a cooking point of view, it was that I'd worked nights my whole adult life, and then suddenly that stopped. I still worked like a complete loon through COVID, doing all sorts of different things, but the nights stopped.
Yeah,
and I just thought, actually, this is really
quite nice.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure what my wife thinks.
Your old boss Marco famously said that he gave back a 3 stars because he was pretending to live a lie and not being in the kitchen. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do people need to be? I mean, I suppose yours isn't called Phil Howard Elystan Street, but like if you've got a name above the door.
No, listen, I firmly believe, if you go out and you buy a Nicole Forey jersey or a Gucci whatever, you're not getting something that's been handcrafted by who. So no, I really don't buy into that. I think you're buying into a cooking style and a guarantee of consistency, hopefully, and a restaurant that's got a heartbeat, and a heartbeat that's kind of born out of somebody's a lifetime of hard work. But no, I don't believe that you should be there. Certainly at Elystan Street, I really wanted people to come to Elystan Street because it's Elystan Street. I have consciously not spent a huge amount of time in the dining room because I didn't want it I didn't want it to be about me. I wanted it to be about Elystan Street, and I've always really believed in the power of a team. I really have. Even through the main years of the Square, it's always been about the team, not about me, so to speak.
Yeah, and that comes out. I mean, we've had a lot of your former chefs and prodigies on the show, and that they talk about that exactly. That
yeah,
thing.
I've always really believed in empowering people. You know, every restaurant I've ever been involved with has been 7 days a week, and people always say, "Oh my God, how do you deal with that?" And it's like, okay, the early days are hard, because you've got to get systems in place, you've got to get people in place, but actually, it's quite liberating because you cannot assume complete control over everything. Yeah. You have to then empower the team, and I've always been, I've never been a kind of a control freak or a perfectionist. I've kind of, I've worked really hard to kind of deliver some great restaurants and products in my time, but equally I'm always like, there's got to be an element of kind of, yeah, that's good. Let's send. It's and it might be within the kind of, the realms of kind of perfection. But I've always been, let's just come on, team. Let's do this.
Yeah. And how much do you think? Because obviously you were head chef at the Square, or opened the Square when you were very young, right? 24, 25?
Yeah, 23, 24. Yeah.
Which could, 23.
Yeah.
So that could go either way. Either you potentially become a maniacal egotist and I'm a genius and this is all about me, or maybe you have to decide to not lean on, but to borrow the skills of the people around you and kind of have that team ethos.
I don't think I was ever particularly kind of strategic about it.
No.
I've been in that kitchen. I've spent as many hours in a kitchen as anyone else in this country has, and certainly through many decades at the Square. But I had a chef called Rob Weston alongside me, who was an absolutely outstanding cook. We were and we were almost a pair. We
right hand, left hand.
But we were open 7 days a week at 2-star level, doing big numbers. So you needed somebody like that. But he really was. We came from virtually identical places when it came to cooking, and that was really important. That enables you to do things that, quite frankly, you couldn't do if you didn't have somebody like that.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you first worked under the Roux Brothers, which you'll get into in proper detail in a second. But just to finish off on Marco, I mean, he famously fired you. I'm guessing you maybe knew the day was coming, because I'm guessing he threatened it to his whole...
I think...
What were your memories of that day?
Listen, I think it's a bit like working at Harvey's is a bit like being a Premier League football manager. There's only one way out. You only ever get sacked unless you're Alex Ferguson. I mean, there's the ending is very rarely happy, and certainly Marco's kitchen was pretty much like that. Listen, it was kind of ridiculous. I'm actually a pretty grounded, easy-going bloke. But I'm a grafter, and in that kitchen, was I an asset or a liability? I was a fucking asset. Do you know what I mean? And so it was ridiculous to get sacked, but that's what happened. One of those nights where he spat the dummy, and I, my famous boiling of the mash, the pomme puree, was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, and was told to go home and not bother coming back or whatever it was. And I was actually really angry.
Yeah,
I just
really.
Thought, don't you take the opportunity of me saying, Harvey's was an amazing place, and he's an amazing guy, but he can also be a complete dickhead. And I think I wanted to leave Harvey's on my terms. I just, you're working, I don't know how many hours a week you worked, but I mean, it was 6 days a week,
all of them,
from 6 a.m. until 2 a.m. and then coming on the Sunday to do his photography for his cookbooks. I mean, it was just life.
Yeah.
And to get sacked, you what?
After that, yeah.
I'm going to give you my life and be an asset to your kitchen, and you're going to sack me.
Yeah.
That's an outrage.
Yeah.
So I actually called him up the next day, and I just said, "What the fuck was that about?" And he said, "Oh, come back." And I'm like, you know what?
Forget it.
Yeah,
because I've heard a similar thing with Matt Tebbett. He fired him, and then the next day phoned him back and was like, seems to be a thing he did.
Well, it was all, I don't know. Was it a game? Was it? I don't know. Listen, Marco was an extraordinary man, and I don't think he was entirely in control of his of his whatever you want to call it in the kitchen, because he was that passionate. And but he did also do all sorts of ridiculous things.
But that kitchen was hell on earth. I mean, he described it himself, and so did his past chefs.
Yeah.
Can you remember any nightmare days where it was just like, I don't know, did you see him when he attacked the guy with a knife to...
Listen, I've seen stuff in that kitchen that you wouldn't want to see in a modern day kitchen.
No.
But equally, you didn't have to go there. You didn't have to take a job. You didn't have to stay.
Yeah.
So if you choose to, he was one of those guys that, as much as he would drive people harder than I've seen anybody else drive anyone, and overstep the mark every now and then. Equally, he was the other end of the spectrum too. He would look you in the eye, talk to you man to man, talk shit while you're prepping your rolls in the little back corridor out the back. So he wasn't just an asshole.
No.
Yeah.
He was, but he was the complete package.
Yeah.
And
amongst all of that, was the food as good as other people have said it was?
yeah, I think it was.
It was. Yeah.
I think what the place that Harvey's holds in the evolution of restaurants and fine dining in this country is really important. Because the food was special. It wasn't perfect. If I look back at it now, there are a couple of things. There was imperfection in the cooking,
Yeah.
but there was also an awful lot of perfection. And certainly from an aesthetical point of view, nobody has ever, I don't think, shown me such an effortless ability to put something so beautifully on a plate.
Yeah.
So the aesthetics were phenomenal. He never claimed to be the greatest. He didn't. Virtually everything on the menu came from somewhere else, or was always a classical combination of flavors.
Yeah.
So he wasn't creative, but his technical ability and his aesthetics were unbelievable. And I think the food really was special. In the same way that you have the Beatles and the Stones and the Doors, and there was some. That's the role that Harvey's played.
Yeah.
That's the piece of the jigsaw of the evolution of cooking. If you were to put it all into one big puzzle, it can't be repeated because there's too much talent out there now. Too much has happened. The point at which he came along was still very early in food in this country, and he brought an unbelievable kind of dimension to it, from the aesthetics, from the purity of it, from the heart, the dynamics in the kitchen, to the, everything that he brought happened at a point in time that can't be repeated.
No.
Because it's in the same way. It is. I think it is very comparable to the Beatles and the Stones. There's too much talent out there. Too much talent.
Yeah,
too much
yeah.
involved. There's too much ability and.
But yeah,
And
we
brilliant.
made a lot of these podcasts now, and so many of them come back to Marco being a kind of moment at which it sort of sparked something.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was extraordinary. The food was really special, and it was amazing. Out of that shitty little kitchen, with a gaggle of burnt out young cooks, and one amazing chef. What came out of that kitchen?
Was it also quite amazing the fact that he got people to schlep to one to a comment? I mean, these are the days of sort of train line on your app and Google Maps and things like that. Feels like nowadays you don't need to be in Chelsea or Mayfair or King's Cross to get people to come. People are willing to travel more. Do you agree with that? I mean, is it easier to have a restaurant now?
I mean, it was a schlep. I happened to be in West London, but it was a schlep to get there. But that was just part of the deal. I mean, it was really exciting kitchen to be in too. I mean, I didn't necessarily feel that when I go into work every day, but it was an amazing place.
Yeah.
Unique.
Should we have a drink then? I mean, did you bring a drink?
I always bring a drink, Freddie.
What have you done today for Mr. Head?
I've done a little blood orange and grapefruit Paloma, a virgin one.
Okay, that's good.
With
I'm
that-
glad I hear the virgin
Yeah.
bloke, because otherwise I'd be on my back very quickly.
Yeah. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, that sounds more than all right.
Phil, we're going to take you back in time. Obviously, you were born in Joburg. Do you have
Yeah.
any memories? You were there till you were 8. Any foodie memories?
Oh
I
God,
know you're a
you
bit
know,
of an athlete.
no, food memories. Yeah, I do actually, because I think food has always been a big part of my life, big part of everyone's life. I mean, we're born into a period of time where we're lucky enough to have go hungry, and I had, I do remember things. Biltong, Cook Sisters, Cook Sisters. I've got a raging sweet tooth.
Yeah.
And they have things called Cook Sisters, which are basically like a deep fried dough, a twist of dough, almost like a plait of dough that then gets steeped in syrup. That are absolutely
God, those sound
epic.
good.
Sounds amazing.
Really good. And then there's crisps and cereal, and I think something called Pro Nutro, which is a bit like a sort of a ready bread kind of thing. But not foodie,
No.
because really food. When I lived in South Africa, food was very, very based. There were no great restaurants. You could go and eat a beautiful crayfish somewhere, but it was, if you were by the coast, but there was no
sort of
Chef.
scene, or
which has changed massively now with Cape Town,
It has
especially.
changed massively.
You then went, obviously, a couple of years later to study microbiology at Kent Uni.
Yeah.
That's the catalyst. That's where you properly fell in love with food, am I right?
Yeah, that is really where I fell in love with food. I grew up in a very kind of stable, lovely, wholesome family. And my mum was a great cook, still is a great cook. So she just did all the cooking. I had a brother. We were just, famished young boys, and she fed us lots of lovely things. Nothing particularly kind of. She was just a good cook. So we ate fresh food, but I didn't do any cooking with her alongside her. There was none of that kind of
apron strings type thing. No,
none of that. But when I went to uni, she packed me off with a few recipes. I ended up living, even in my first year, actually, I don't quite know why I am, but I never lived on campus. I was always off campus, and so I had to kind of play my part. And I knew absolutely from the get-go that was something really significant had happened. That, the discovery of cooking, and it's quite hard to kind of know exactly what that was about. But I knew in the moment, not that I was going to become a chef, but that this was something the first thing I come across in life that really got me in the core. So
can you remember what were the recipes? Can you remember what sort of thing she was?
Yeah, I can certainly remember. One of them was spinach soup, and literally, I mean, my mum. This is back. I knew I was going to live with two vegetarians. So back in the whenever this was 80s, they were like aliens. They were very rare people, vegetarians, and my mum was completely clueless about vegetarians. So she sent me off with things that were vegetarian.
Yeah.
One was scrambled egg with kind of diced courgettes in it, and the other one was spinach soup, and. I can remember making them. I mean, I think the spinach soup. Literally, you cooked whatever. I did whatever. Onion, spinach, I guess, some stock and a cube maybe, and then rubbed it through a sieve.
Okay, nice.
I did kind of back in the war, and you ended up with kind of like a loose cowpat kind of emerging out the other side. And then scrambled eggs with courgettes.
Nice.
That's
so you rotated through those to start with.
Yeah.
You obviously enjoyed your time.
Cheers.
Cheers. You obviously enjoyed your time at university, and then go off to Australia for sort of a delayed gap year where you end up doing some waitering. But upon your return, you applied to be a chef. Who were you applying to? And why?
Australia was important because I kind of, I felt very, privileged to have had the education that I had. I felt I wasted it at university, and that kind of emerged with a really poor degree, and I felt that that there was probably an expectation that I would do something more with my degree. There was no history of cooking in the family. Going to Australia, I kind of got far enough away from the perceived pressures. Nobody was giving me a hard time about what I was going to do, but I felt
you felt that yourself, yeah.
And once I was far enough away, and I worked in a restaurant in Sydney, I again thought, this is my world. Even though I was a waiter in Sydney, and so when I got back, I thought, right, that's it. And I picked up, the Good Food Guides. Then it was probably Egon Ronne and Good Food Guide and maybe Michelin, I can't remember. And I just fired out a letter to probably about a dozen chefs. Then a complete mixed bag. Some, Nicola Dennis to Simon Hopkinson, Sally Clark, Roux Restaurants Limited as it was then, and got a mixed response. But in the end, the Roux Brothers offered me an apprenticeship, and I thought, well,
could be worse
places. They were the top of the tree then, really.
Yeah.
So I took that job.
So you were about 22 at this point, something like that, 22?
Then I was 21, probably. Yeah.
How did that play out?
So it was interesting. They had a lot going on, the Roux Brothers at that time. They had a massive importing business, all the produce that they were using. They had multiple restaurants, multiple high achieving restaurants. They also had a contract catering division, which was doing the food for a lot of the big city banks. And so that's where I started, at Kleinwort Benson.
Really?
Yeah, on the 22nd floor. Amazing view. Best kitchen I ever worked in. With a great chef called Roger Naylor, who was one of the original Roux proteges, and I worked there for a year cooking. They basically had a mass staff canteen downstairs, which wasn't a bundle of fun, and then they had the management canteen up top, which was really good food, but it was still a canteen. Then they had the kind of fine dining, entertaining floor, which was I don't know, 20 different private dining rooms and a small space that operated as a restaurant. I remember thinking at the time, certainly, it was serious food going.
Yeah.
I mean, people eating foie gras and lobster tails and langoustines and raviolis and all sorts. It was proper haute cuisine.
Yeah.
And then.
Was there a sense of being trained? Because you went in.
Well, it was, but
untrained,
even then, kitchens are always short-staffed, and well, that was nothing different. So there was. It really wasn't the. I was being paid as an apprentice, but actually working as a chef de partie, really.
Yeah.
And but I learnt an awful lot there. I did learn a lot.
Yeah.
It was great, and. It was kind of 9 to 5. Although I was first in, last out, every day. It was kind of sustainable. And then I went for dinner at Harvey's one night, and I just thought, that is where I need to be.
Yeah.
Can you remember? Yeah. Trotter.
I had tagliatelle. Actually, my wife had the tagliatelle oysters. Which she would still say is probably the greatest thing she's ever eaten, irritatingly, but possibly true.
Yeah.
I had something called the ragu of a fish and shellfish, I think, or ragu of shellfish with leeks and truffle, which is still one of the greatest sauces I've ever tasted. And you've got to be shifting huge volumes of oysters elsewhere to generate the oyster juice. And a scallop velouté and a vegetable nage are combined in equal quantities to make that sauce. But the sauce is a I mean, it's just the most unbelievably delicious thing, with panfuls of langoustine tails and scallops and oysters in there and truffle. Yeah, it was just banging.
It's funny because actually Palmer Watts came on a couple of weeks ago, and he said he ate the fat duck in the early days, and then just knew he had to go and work for Heston.
Yeah,
similar experience for you with Marco. How did you then get the job? Was it?
I spoke to him that night. Actually, I can't quite remember how he ended up. Quite how he ended up at our table, whether he went to every table or whether I don't know quite what happened there, but we did, and he offered me a job kind of there and then. Wow. So I went back to Bendham and gave my notice and moved on. I mean, I loved. So I went back to Roux restaurants, and I mean, I loved that job, but equally, I just that was it. There was just this whole new scene going on.
Yeah.
But he was doing sort of incredible, as you were just saying there, sort of French modern cooking, but steeped in the classics. And then eventually, after you get fired, you do go to work for Simon Hopkinson at Bibendum. That must have been a complete shift in sort of the output and the.
It was a very different kitchen. I mean, could not have been more different. But that was the first kitchen I'd seen 7 days a week. 2 teams working. Simon very much, obviously the kind of the leader of that kitchen, the creator, the writer of menus and everything. But it was, the team delivered the end product. Whereas at Harvey's, it was all about Marco, and everyone was filtering into that. But nothing went out that hadn't gone through his eyes, tasting spoon, roasting fork, whatever it was. And Simon was really about. It was the first time actually where I heard people talk passionately about ingredients and seasonality and provenance. And the kitchen was not slow enough. That's kind of undermining it a bit, but it was slow enough maybe to kind of to see a box of Seps come in and begin to understand what a privilege it is to work with those kind of ingredients and squabs and langoustines and all those things. Whereas at Harvey's, it was somehow all just you're just playing Lego blocks, really, and so that was really important, and a lot of trust put into his chefs. You were given a lot of, you were empowered to get on with it and make it happen.
Yeah,
there's your section.
Was he was young as well at the time?
Simon,
as in like
God, I don't know. He said Dave's definitely got a few years on me, but he was in the kitchen and cooking his heart out.
Yeah.
With the 2 Harris brothers, they were the sous chefs. Henry,
really,
and Matthew. Obviously Henry's kind of made lots of noise in the last couple of years. And Matthew was also a great cook.
Seems a lot of the chefs we're talking with at the moment are sort of sick and tired of long, multi-course tasting menus. It feels like there's a real move back to sort of 3 good courses.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely believe. I've never been. Listen, I've cooked tasting menus. Through the Square we had an 8-course tasting menu because it was then very much in vogue and it's good business and people do enjoy eating them. I like to connect with a plate of food,
Yeah.
and I think tasting menus 99% of the time strip you of the ability to get to feel it, to enjoy it, to have that sense of, when you're hungry, you're stuck into a plate of food, not wait painfully for another little chefy kind of morsel and then ooh and ah about it and then get irritated waiting another 20
for the next thing. Yeah.
Elystan Street, we do something called Six of the Best, because ultimately some people still do want to come in and see what you've got, see what ammo you got, and 6 courses still means that each individual plate is still got, you can connect with it. It's not too small.
It's not just a bite.
But personally, I'm very much of the I like to get stuck in something that.
Same question about sort of classical cooking versus innovation. I mean, it seems like people are now just realizing how
food's
important
coming
it is to have
back
French
to a really good place, and I've said my entire career I have not been served, and whatever you want to call it, an innovative plate of food that has ever given me as much pleasure as a classical plate of food, and that's just fact, and that's just my fact, and I don't know, it's a big subject to debate, but I do come back to seasonality, which is the heart and soul of all great cooking, and nature does have a way of producing in any one period of time a repertoire of ingredients that have a really great natural affinity with each other, and there's that expression, what grows together goes together, but it really is true, and that's what classical flavors are, and there was a whole generation of chefs, kind of my generation and younger, who wanted to do some new stuff, and that's where modern cooking went, because they were kind of, that's old fashioned, tomatoes and fucking basil, done with that, and mushrooms and thyme and garlic, let's do something different. But I've never been served anything literally nothing that is matched. You got 2 equally, talented and beautifully, talented chefs and beautifully crafted dishes. The mushrooms and thyme and garlic would always win over the mushrooms and saffron and fucking celery.
Yeah, agreed.
It is,
Having done your time at Vendham, Marco's trying to lure you back to Harvey's.
Yeah.
But one part of Harvey's is obviously Nigel Platts-Martin, who's probably the most successful unknown man in food outside the industry, right? I mean, the guy's had 5 Michelin Star restaurants, just genius, everything he touches, and also his talent spotting. Yeah. So I was just going to ask sort of a word on his genius, but also a word on how you guys ended up opening the square.
Yeah. Well, listen, it was a slightly bumpy ride. I went, but Marco called me up. I had reconnected with Marco after being sacked, and he said, listen, come back to Harvey's, and I'm going to open a new restaurant with Nigel, and so I went back to Harvey's, but it was pretty turbulent. I had no experience. I'd never put an order in. I didn't know what a supplier was. I'd done nothing. I was still only just barely 3 years into cooking, and so he, in the end, Marco and Nigel parted company with that second venture, and Marco stayed at Harvey's. Nigel took on the square. I was the person that Marco had put forward, so Nigel just said, "Why don't you come with?" So that was how that began, which was, farcical really, but thankfully I'd amassed just enough kind of knowledge to kind of pull it off.
You're obviously, self-deprecating, but what? And I ask this a lot of people because I'm fascinated by it. Did you think you were quite good by that stage? Had you started to feel like, I've got this, there's something here? And B,
it's funny because I ask people that when I recruit, I ask people if they think they're a good cook. It sounds like a really kind of
ask the thing, but no, yeah.
What are you going to do? Get someone to cook you lunch, or get someone to cook you a brunoise? Nothing really tells you. But the question that you ask is, if you say, when you're standing in a kitchen, over a period of time, surrounded by the other cooks in the kitchen, are you? If I was to give you each a box of mackerel and say, fill it, are you faster? Are you better? Do you better job? Are you slower? Are you clumsier? You must end up with a feel about where you are in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was young and don't even think I thought about it really. I thought I'd given an opportunity, certainly, I was. It's all I thought about was food and cooking. So I think you just go with it.
But stood in those kitchens, you'd back yourself to be quick. Get through your prep list. Something at the first telling.
Yeah,
are those the things.
Those kind of things. Yes, lacking in knowledge. Though, I mean, there's only so much you can learn in 3 years, and so I wouldn't say necessarily it was a regret, but it would be it would make more sense to walk further down the journey of learning before taking on a restaurant, just because the rate at which you can learn when you're on your own and going down like a sack of shit 7 days a week with insufficient staff and no time in your life.
Yeah,
learning does slow down at that point. You can't then just suddenly say, I'm going to learn how to make terrine en croûte or something. But
and did that limit you in terms of menu writing? Because you're thinking, I can only put things on this menu that I.
No, I don't think so.
I mean,
I think in the end, you do make it happen. I think if you were to ask, all the employees, the Squares menus were big. They were. We used to have 12 starters, 12 main courses, tasty menu.
Wow.
It was like it was proper. So there was a pretty broad repertoire, but it was all ultimately French technique. I wasn't, which is still quite a lot.
I mean, huge. Yeah,
it is huge. But and we do continue to learn, because if that's what you want to do, you do. But
Did you get any shit from other people? I mean, John Williams said you need to do 10 years before you become a chef. We've interviewed a lot of chefs who said that, they can be quite jealous beings, other chefs. Did you get any, here's this young buck who's 23, had 2 years, 3 years in the kitchen?
I don't know, but I mean, not that I heard. I think if you're grafting and, if you're, and that's what I was, that's what I certainly was doing. It is interesting because when the Michelin Guide first came out in Japan, I can't remember the exact stats, but there was a whole, scattering of 3-star restaurants from the get-go.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, how fucking hard can it be? He's got a slice of it of tuna, dip it in soy, chuck it on some rice and make it tui, and there you go, Bob's your uncle.
3-star Japanese food.
Yeah.
But the reality is, whilst there is an element of error, the most likely place for error to creep into cooking is in that à la minuteness that happens in French and European cooking. When you're just stove full of pans and stuff so there is, it's precarious. Kitchens in full flight are precarious places. And I don't think that's necessarily a word that gets attributed to many Japanese kitchens. But equally, in Japan, there is no fast track to the top.
No,
there is no way. My kind of scenario would happen.
Would play out, no,
just wouldn't happen. And you have to you work. I don't know what exactly how it pans out, but you spend a ridiculous amount of time learning how to cook rice,
washing rice, and
then you can't pick up a knife.
Yeah, we spoke to Chef Masaki from Dining's SW3. He said you did 3 years before you could even pick up a knife.
Yeah. And so by the time you get to running a kitchen, you know your craft. And if you know your craft, and in all that time, there's a rightness and a wrongness in so much of cooking that should become kind of intuitive. And I think with young chefs, and a lot of the stuff that I kind of see on menus, you just think, really?
Like what?
Well, just flavour combinations, just kind of random food, and well, they can be really good.
Yeah, they can.
You leave flatbreads.
But I think experience and an understanding of your craft is. You look at someone like Adam Byatt, who's matured into just one of the greatest cooks the country's ever had.
Yeah,
and it's just everything he puts on a plate is just correct. You know? And as a result, it's just delicious.
So would you say he's the most sort of naturally talented chef you've worked alongside?
I don't know whether I'd say that. I think he has become. Who do I respect most in the industry now? I think it's probably Adam. I respect his career. He's been on a journey. Mm-hmm. Most of it's been in a positive direction, but he's had a few bumps along the way. I've done lots of stuff with Adam, and I just think he is. I just love the human being and the chef that he has become. You know, he is just a top bloke and a top cook.
He's
Sort of built something special with Trinity, isn't he?
Yeah,
The way,
he's
very
built,
pragmatic
he's
in the way
built
he's kind of using the whole
really
site.
special. Yeah. I mean, profoundly special. And actually, it's a slightly multifaceted business with upstairs, outside, even bistro uniforms, the same part. And Charlie's is obviously separate, but it's a very special creation in its totality, and that's entirely to do with Adam.
Yeah.
Square is an all-in-one restaurant tech solution built for single and multi-location restaurants, bars and pubs. It's the point of sale that works with almost everything you need for day-to-day service. Payment processing, table management, and inventory management are just the beginning. The best restaurant POS software gives you the power to connect the front and back of house while freeing you up to focus on the customer experience, improving the flow of orders, and finding more ways to keep profit in your pocket. With Square for Restaurants, get menu management, online ordering, self-service ordering, and much, much more. Drop the pen and paper and simplify the way you run your business. For more information, visit www.square.com or click the link in the bio. Well, Ben, should we get some food out? I mean, what have you done for Phil today?
So Swaledale have sent me some treats.
Right.
And two of which they sent me a pair of wild duck, teal.
Oh,
And so I made a little Venetian ragu. So it's very simple.
amazing.
It's fundamentally I've made pasta, but yeah,
For the pasta king. For the king of
thing to
pasta.
do. But these teal were looking at me. To be fair, actually, I opened the box and I thought something horrific had got into the box. There were these two duck heads peering up at me. I jumped back, but anyways, having got over that,
Wow.
I made some.
teal are very special little birds.
They're cool, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very cool. Yeah.
What makes them so special?
I don't know. They just got a very elegant protein. I haven't cooked teal for a long time actually, but we used to use a lot of them at the Square.
They are a wild duck, right? Is that
They're a
right?
wild duck, yeah. They're a small wild duck. They're petite. Yeah, I could probably eat three. You know, if you sat down with
Well,
an appetite.
well, how many did you bring, Ben?
They're quite they're quite dinky, but
Yeah.
but the actual quality of the protein that
Amazing.
is a teal breast is very special.
Well, you can
they're
get
very
them from
fine.
Swaledale if you want to cook at home, Phil, if you ever have your
Yeah.
time off.
Yeah.
You opened up the Square, I've been talking about the Square there, during a very tough economic environment
Yeah.
off the back of the Gulf War. But you guys created a buzz. You know, you were talking about the Beatles, the Stones, the sort of main quartet of, you know, Nika Dennis-like places, about 4 or 5 amazing temples of gastronomy in London. And then you suddenly rock up and make it fucking sexy to be at a restaurant. Did that feel quite cool? Because even though it was hard that first year economically, possibly, you immediately created a buzz, a vibe. People wanted to be there.
No, we made a big noise quickly, and that's partly because it was genuinely easier, I think, probably to make a big noise back then because there just wasn't the competition. So if you were doing something interesting, you were going to be found. We had a pretty wacky dining room. You know, David Collins. It was the first restaurant he'd done, and he. You know, it was different.
It's incredible, yeah, sure.
But we were cooking. I don't know. I guess it was. You know, there's something. You know, the restaurant business now is so hard because it's so competitive.
Yeah.
And the one thing that some of the great restaurants have got. You look at someone like Dorian now.
Yeah.
When you walk into a place that is
Very good.
packed and it has an energy about
want
it,
some?
actually,
Cheers, sir.
the
You could
the-
choose yourself if you want to. I don't know if hands are cheers.
the food is almost secondary. Not that I would say the food at the Square was secondary, but when you've got a place that's just firing on all cylinders, it's captured the imagination of the eating public, and it's busy and buzzy, and the product is good. It's special. Yeah, it's where the whole is more than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
And the Square was that.
I mean, you want... Sorry. Go on.
No,
Right.
I was just going to say, I mean, it was a bit like there weren't a handful of restaurants, but if you were someone who was going to go out and eat at a restaurant, you could probably eat at the sort of top ones in a month if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a
Yeah.
different environment. I mean, now to work through London's
There's some
good
cheese there
restaurants.
if you want, Phil.
I don't think it needs it for anything.
Oh, sorry. I haven't tried it yet.
That is delicious.
Well,
Good teal, right?
put that in your
Is that
CV.
right?
Phil has things delicious.
Good teal, but good cooking.
Venetian ragu.
You could murder a teal.
You should get back in the kitchen professionally.
and end up with something very underwhelming if you didn't.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a job at Elystan Street for you.
Got
Who knows?
really nice. It's got zing to it too.
The little,
It's got-
yeah.
yeah,
I believe in vinegar, Phil.
yeah. Vinegar. No, I mean, it really.
Yeah.
The vinegar is the magic touch in there.
Phil, you won your first Michelin Star in 1994.
Yeah.
second in 98. But I've read you were working some brutal hours. I mean, 19, 20 hours, sleeping in the kitchen.
Yeah, well, yeah.
What was it like? I mean, did you have to do it for the business? Still do?
No, he just did it because it was, the place was ferociously busy, and I know you write stupid menus, you just got to get the job done, and I think it was probably nothing more strategic than that. There was no, there was no strategy at the Square. We were just doing what we did. When I look back, it was really humbling to think about how hard people worked. Not that I felt any difference. I like to think I've always looked eye to eye at anyone in the kitchen. I've never been senior to. I just get graft alongside everyone else. But ultimately, how hard people worked for us is quite. Yeah. It is humbling. I don't know. It's just kind of how it was. It's just. I suppose maybe you didn't see it as being shocking because I come from Harvey's and you'd seen whatever I was It was certainly a much nicer environment.
Yeah,
I think.
Do you you must know that that's quite unique at that time though, because everyone who comes on who was a chef at that time speaks glowingly about the Square and how you.
No, listen, it was special because I could listen. The food wasn't perfect, but on a good day you could eat the best food London had to offer because we cooked some great food.
Yeah.
But God, it was a struggle. Just the sheer output of those chefs. And when I think back to that opening team, my heart is warm when I think about all those people and certainly the opening team and the early years. Genuinely, I feel it is a heartwarming thought to people because we turned up to battle every day, and there were no rules in the kitchen. Kind of anything went. Yeah. And at the time, I didn't think anything of that. If you wanted to smoke. It was kind of
really because
you haven't got time to go out and smoke. So if you're going to smoke right there. Just
right. There's a big attraction.
And I know that sounds almost pathetic, but at the time it just was what it was, and kind of I don't think it was particularly clever, but it just was. It was what it was. Anything went down, but I deny any kitchen anywhere to have ever had a bigger sense of camaraderie and crusadeship than the Square. And that was special, and that I think
it's amazing. I mean, you made such a huge splash on the food scene so quickly, obviously with the Michelin Stars, but even before that, the buzz you're creating in London. Ben's actually spoken about sort of getting up at 4 a.m. to work in kitchens and having to fuel it through like hard spirits, coffee, all those kind of things. Yeah. You had a slightly different tipple at the time. Like, obviously, it must have been quite weird living a double life before they connected. And you couldn't hide it anymore.
Listen,
you mind talking about that? Or?
Yeah, I don't want to kind of listen. I'd always been since the day I went to university. The conveyor belt of life presents all sorts of things, and I'm a yes man rather than a no man. And why is that? Who knows? But ultimately, when work life did get incredibly hard. And you find ways to kind of either fuel that or kind of pacify the stress that goes with it. It can feel like it helps, not that it obviously does. And I didn't run with it. I just that's the route I took, and in the end it took its toll super quick. Because it just doesn't work.
No.
So for me, anyway.
Did it have like an impact on your food though at the time? Because obviously you were still running this amazing.
Listen, there were my behaviour for a time was inconsistent, and I'm sure that took its toll to some extent on the food because I was an important cog in the mechanics of the kitchen, and if you just go AWOL, that's not helpful. But equally, it was a 7-day week operation, and it thundered along if I had a day off, and so it was it was not. It was what it was.
Who comes up to you at that point and knocks you out of it, helps you out of it?
It was Nigel.
Was it? Yeah, right. Yeah,
it was Nigel.
Yeah.
And I will always have immense gratitude for the courage that it must have taken for him to kind of
address the elephant in the room,
out of the denial of what it was probably in his mind for a while, and that's it. Then the change was hard. Took a couple of solid attempts until I found a new path.
Yeah,
And you managed to swap sort of quite hard drugs with exercise, which I know now is
I think
a salvation for so many people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, there's no two ways about it. Exercise has kept me sane through the lion's share of my career. End of story. And I think exercise is great for everybody, you know. But not everyone's going to go and do what I did if they don't do exercise.
Yeah.
And so no, exercise for me has been absolutely instrumental. That's why I went out this morning in the fucking snow on my bike and got laughed at by everybody. Yeah. But at the end of the day, today is better for me. And if I'm happy, I'm nicer to be around. I'm nicer for me. I'm nicer for my wife. And so it is. The exercise has been absolutely at the centre of my life since then.
Like your story, obviously, it is unique to you and whatever, but in this industry, that other people, do you ever get people reaching out to you, knowing of kind of what you've been through?
I just saw somebody the other day who will remain anonymous, but he worked at Elystan Street. He had a big problem, but he hit his rock bottom whilst at Elystan Street, or very soon after.
Yeah.
He reached out. We connected, and I really helped kind of get him to engage with recovery. And I saw him on Thursday, I think it was, and he was celebrating 3 years clean.
Yeah, nice.
And you know, that's amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Listen, people say, "Oh, your industry's so full of it."
I mean, every industry.
I don't buy into that. I think the world is riddled with it, and it's a big problem. And I don't think our industry is special. I think it's perhaps easier to kind of conceal it, because you can kind of, you know, from whether it's from it's easier for it to be a problem. But I don't think our industry is special in the.
No, I mean, I would agree with that.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. 94 to 2016, you hold Michelin Stars at the Wonderful Square. And then obviously you open Elystan Street, which also gets a Michelin Star. I mean, you're being quite selfish. Everywhere you open gets a Michelin Star. It's quite wonderful. But every person we have on, you know, we've had your protégés, Aaron, Adam Byatt, Jun Tanaka. They've all said you create the best menus out of anyone in the country, maybe in the whole scene. Yeah. What's your creative process behind coming up with a menu?
Listen, I think if I was to say what is my contribution to a kitchen, it's that. And listen, I've got no idea what it is. It's not something I think about. I don't. But I do think there are other people out there who can chop a better chive, make a better terrine, perhaps run a better pass, put something on a plate better, train better, teach better. I don't know. That is fact. I think palate is a kind of a God-given thing. It's certainly. Did I think? Well, no, I want to stay classical. You know, some people end up painting beautiful watercolor paintings, and other people go and paint a dot in the middle, and that's Damien Hirst. And I certainly, my food, my cooking is just how it is. And if I'm going to write a menu, I just go and sit in a room, a quiet room somewhere, and I literally, if I'm changing the menu in April, I'll write down a list of ingredients in April and May that are coming into season. And I don't, for many years, physically would do it. Now it's kind of more of it's just in the ether. And then just start drafting a menu. And I think, I don't know, I think.
Do you have a sense of what the inputs are? Is it just experience at this point, or is it?
I don't know. I've also said that I think menus and dishes and food should be created with a lion's share of the work being driven by the stomach, with a little bit of contribution from the brain, and that's I think why my food has stayed true, and it's been in the most part delicious rather than being clever or interesting or different or groundbreaking. And I think the stomach's where it's going to end up. And that's when you see that's what gets excited when you're fucking hungry. And it doesn't matter whether you want to eat a hot dog or a langoustine with truffle. It's the stomach that's kind of. And I think a lot of people get far too cerebral about food, and I don't know. But listen, if I was one thing, I do feel that that's probably the most important contribution that I've made to the restaurants I've been involved with, is the writing of the menu. Yeah. You then make sure you've got a really great team to execute, and if they're getting executed correctly, then you've got great food. Yeah. And I think it's just kind of, I don't know. It's I've got a classical palate. And going back to what we were saying earlier, I do believe that give me a tomato in the summer and a cold pressed extra virgin olive oil and a little bit of rock salt and maybe some basil. That's,
you can't beat it.
I will never
Yeah.
divert from that. But I think there is, even if you absolutely adhere to the purity of that, there is always some scope to be a bit creative with either how you cook it or present it or how it goes on the plate. And some things are absolutely classical, and then they are truly classical, and then you can have contemporary food, which can also be a kind of classical dish, just funked up a bit to in some way, shape, or form. And but it's the flavours that are so important.
If we had to press you for one of your favourites you ever created.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, listen, the old Longestine dish does get trotted out a lot, and even old, Gary at Cornice is it's quite nice. I feel like I can retire now.
Yeah.
Along with Pierre Kaufman and his trotter, I've got
your longest thing.
Yeah.
Marco said to me, if you come up with one perfect dish in a career, you've done well. And his was the tagliatelle of oysters, and which was an absolutely blinding dish.
Can you take our listeners through your dish in case they don't know? I mean, they should do. But if they do,
Can I what? Sorry.
just take our listeners through the sort of concept of your dish, or the different sort of items in it.
What in the Longestine dish?
Yeah.
It is basically, God, what makes it so good? I mean, it's as much about plumpness and texture and sweetness and earthiness as it is kind of anything else. It's basically the flavour bomb is a field mushroom puree. That's kind of the heart and soul of the flavour, and it's just this unbelievably powerful field mushroom puree, silky smooth, but it tastes there's nothing reduced or concentrated in there, so it doesn't taste kind of marmitey, but it's just big bold flavour.
Yeah.
And you just get one perfect gnocchi, potato and parmesan gnocchi. Then there'd be a dot of puree on top of that, and that was the only thing that changed through the seasons. And if it was spring, it would be pea puree, and if it was autumn, it would be pumpkin puree.
Yeah.
And then a big fuck off langoustine sat on top, gently roasted,
So good.
which are now just too expensive to think about using really. And then it was the langoustine was napped with this amazing sauce, which was a Michel Bras sauce actually, which was this potato truffle emulsion, which is just equal quantities of a stock that can vary a bit, and baked potato and butter and truffle, and it's just
Can't beat it.
it's really naughty. It's really absolutely beautiful, and then a few shavings of truffle and a couple of crisp shallot rings.
Were you sad to see how the square ended up? I mean, obviously you guys sold it, and then apparently it closed down during a lunch service.
Yeah, it was very sad. Listen, it was heartbreaking, kind of in the end, because the square was a great place. It was my life for a quarter of a century, but in the end, it was time to move on. I just. You open it in your early 20s, and you're a different person in so many. By the time you get to 50, you just are a different person. What you want to eat, what you want to cook, what you want to, and I no longer felt true to what we were cooking really. And also, we had just kind of done, and it was, Nigel was ready too. But you kind of like to think that you'd all crusade over the finish line and crack open some vintage champagne and celebrate the end of it. But of course, that's just not how selling a business works.
No.
It's all very undercover.
Unless you're Michel Regina.
Yeah, I know. I was so envious of that. It was kind of
just the sort of
it was so it looked like a really, and also just epic to cash in for 6 months on a full dining room.
I know.
Cellar. I mean,
Genius.
just pure genius. But it's also what the Gavroche warranted. It deserved that.
Yeah.
It absolutely deserved that. But it was just a different scenario. We wanted to pass the square. We wanted to sell the square to somebody who we genuinely believed was best positioned to honour it and give it what it needed, which was a massive kind of refurbishment. Amal Nabella was a very, very passionate restaurateur. He operated at the right level, so he was, out of the options we had, it felt like the right option.
Yeah.
You do a lot of ownership now yourself. Ben Marks, we've been to his place, Perella.
Yeah.
I know you're a part owner in there. Are you still a part owner in the Lebury?
Just out of the Lebury actually this year,
because that must have been one of the greatest investments ever. I mean, it turned into this Colosseum.
Yeah. It was. No, it was a great investment. But you know what? I put some proper money into the Lebury, and it's a proper punt. A new restaurant is, and it wasn't easy going in the early days, but no, the Lebury came.
But did you know Brett was going to be this amazing kind of
Brett, Brett's a special cook.
Yeah.
He's a really special cook. He is. It's fascinating because he comes from an unsophisticated cooking background. Where he grew up.
In Australia, right? Is that?
Yeah, in Australia, Newcastle. It's got nothing to its name really. And his early cooking. I can't remember the name of the restaurant where he cooked, but it was his background was not sophisticated. He then spent some time at the Square, obviously, but his cooking. It's changed. It has changed now. It's gone. There are other contributing factors at the Ledbury these days, but Brett's food is very pure and beautiful, and effortless, and it's really lovely.
Yeah.
I think it's pure class. There's no one drives harder than Brett to create magic moments in restaurants. So that's what it's about.
100%. Let's go to your go-to locations, starting with your go-to weeknight restaurant. I mean, now you're not in the kitchen as much. You can go out and maybe see your proteges or maybe see other people. Where are you going?
Do you know what? The problem is I live out and not quite in the sticks, but out in West London. I am actually I'm not lazy, but I go to Riva. That's probably my kind of go-to weeknight.
Yeah.
It's been there. It's it's a family thing. It's we've lived in Barnes a long time. It's consistent. You go there because you know what you're going to have, not because you wonder what's going to be on the menu. And that tends to be that's what you want out of that kind of a restaurant. I could draft the Riva menu here and now, and it is what it is.
It's a comfort blanket.
Yeah, it is a comfort blanket. It is the closest restaurant to our front door.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Very nice.
It is.
Quite handy.
Hope we don't have any stalkers listening.
No. Have you ever had a meal deal?
I have a meal. I do occasionally have a meal deal. When I'm on the move, I'm a fisherman. I don't fish as much as I'd like to.
Yeah.
If I go fishing, all eating rules go out the window.
Yeah, right.
Fishing is the part of fishing is to smoke loads of cigarettes and eat loads of shit.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
So what's in the cool box or the hamper or
shit? But I would a meal deal would be a sandwich, packet of crisps, loads of chocolate, can of Coke.
Yeah,
everyone's happy.
Yeah.
What's in
you
the
fish
sandwich?
with Marco? Sorry, Freddie.
I'm quite particular about sandwiches these days. Just from listen, I really don't preach about what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat, but I don't eat anything that's cheap and got chicken in it. I won't touch because that's just a misery.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right.
That chicken has just had a hellish existence. Classical things,
Cheese and ham, plum.
Yeah, all that kind of thing.
Delicious.
What about the favourite place for a special supper? Where are you going?
Special supper, I would go probably to the River Caf.
Nice.
It is probably the second closest restaurant.
Yeah.
So now somebody can work out pretty much the opposite direction.
Geolocating you. Yeah.
Slowly pinning it down.
Yeah.
The River Cafe is an extraordinary place. It serves some of the most delicious food available in London. I mean, it just does. And life is always better if sitting in the River Cafe. It just is. It's uplifting. It's invigorating. It's delicious. It's special. All those years, I can remember. In the early years of the Square, I used to buy our fish from a company called Cove Shellfish, which was a small fish supply based in Cornwall. A fantastic guy owned it, who sadly died far too young, tragically. And I would always have to fight for the big turbot with the River Cafe.
Really?
Yeah. And I like that because I just, because you pay a huge premium for them.
Yeah.
And I just like the fact that, it's just evidence that they will pay whatever it takes to get the best ingredients.
Yeah.
And these days, that's quite hard because ingredients are so expensive.
Yeah.
As is the River Cafe, but it is. I still think
At least you're paying for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. You are.
Do you have a little hidden gem?
Well, we do have now a restaurant in Barnes called the Waterman's Arms.
Oh yeah.
I think it's probably getting a bit of broadcasting and airtime,
Yeah.
but it's really good. And it's not just a good neighbourhood restaurant. It's a truly great little restaurant. It's a pub. It calls itself a pub. It's not really. It is technically a pub, but it's food driven, and it's really good.
Yeah.
It's it's there are. I think it really represents where food has got to in London on a casual basis, which is kind of how most of us now like to eat. Don't have to go out and think about what you're going to. You just want to go out and eat something really banging, without having to think about what you're going to wear. And there is creativity in there. There's little flashes of brilliance in the cooking, which is so. There's some fun in there. I had an absolutely epic dish earlier this year, which was kind of pork. I can't remember what cut it was. Might have been jowl with a bit of crackling and little pickled onions and nectarine and chili, and just like fucking hell, not the kind of
No, they're up in the pub.
Fun food, like good flavours, big flavours.
Fun food. Yeah. But then you can just get yourself beautiful. They do a butterflied red mullet.
Good, sounds amazing.
Steamed just with olive oil. They do, but then you can just have a Côte de Boeuf. You can have a steak.
Get down there. When I come visit you in Kingston,
it is really good. Yeah. It is really good. It delivers.
What about your dream long weekend getaway? You and your wife, maybe the kid. I don't know. You're heading.
God, where do we go? If I was just going to go and raid the bank and go anywhere now, it'd probably be Heckfield Place.
Yeah.
I think Sky's a great
Sky Gindle.
Yeah. She's
growing everything on site.
Yeah, it's the real deal. I mean, it's also, I think Country House Hotels. I used to, I'm a complete hotel victim. My wife, her dad was in the hotel industry, and I grew up never going to hotels. My folks just don't do hotels.
No.
I absolutely love hotel. I just think they're great things, and I think Heckfield Place is a great representation of what a country house hotel should be, if that's what they call themselves now. Compared to what they were 25 years ago when I started, where there was all frilly food, and beds and frilly everything, and
lots of frills,
and Heckfield Place is just the food is you could eat there every night of the week. It's just lovely and delicious, and the place is just phenomenal too.
Yeah, very comfortable. Yeah. Good art collection.
It's hardly a B&B.
No, it's not a B&B.
So that's where, if I had the option tomorrow to go, that's where I'd head.
I think it's time for your deli steady cook. This is when we ask you to put together a dish. You can bring anything to the party, right?
Yeah,
but you need to use Ben's.
I've got to use
items.
Well, try to.
Try to.
I don't know if you're aware of Poon's wontoneria. They're very good, but this is a dried pork and duck liver sausage.
Okay.
Oh, Christ alive.
So this has got to go in, is it?
It could go in.
Okay.
It'd be nice for it to go in.
Okay. I need to just see what this.
Yeah, have a look.
See what this
beef
is. Oh, okay, that's proper. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's amazing. They make all their own charcuterie, make amazing noodles.
Pork and duck liver sausage.
Okay. We've got some of.
I'm on it. That looks like
some of the pod's favourite.
Okay.
Bold bean, queen beans.
Yeah.
Or queen butter beans.
Yeah. I do like a butter bean.
Good, right?
Yeah. I do like a butter bean. And you're doing well because you've got a bland, a beautiful bit of texture, but a bland bit of texture.
Yeah.
And with what I can only imagine is a wildly tasty sausage.
Yeah, there's a decent punch flavour in the sausage.
Yeah, that's.
Then a bit of a left thing. A friend of the pod, Ben Tish. He's done a little muhambra.
Okay.
For deli, exclusively for deli, which, knowing Ben, will be very delicious.
I sat next to him just the other day at an olive oil tasting.
Did you?
And refreshed my memory of what a lovely guy he is.
Very nice man, yeah.
Was that the River Gather?
Yeah.
Yeah, looked like a good come together of many people. Shame we weren't invited.
Next year, Freddie. Next year.
It was really
patient. Just to throw, then, this is a little crispy chili oil from Prawn on the Lawn.
Oh, good guy.
So we're dancing slightly through different cuisines, and I know you're a classical French man, so this will.
But you're taking me. I'm being forced into the deep snow here.
Yeah.
I did. That looks hardcore.
It's very good.
You see, I need my wife on my knee now because she's just great. She just loves. We have a shop in Barnes. It's a Londis actually, but it's the most extraordinary
one of their bougie Londises.
Yeah, it's one of the. It's not a big shop, but it's just got great stuff in it. And my wife is a truly great cook, and she's messy, but she is truly great. And she has jars of all this kind of gear.
What you could do, I've also got one more thing, which is a cold. It's a hot sauce. You're
going to give me fish soup? It's like
no. This is a burnt pineapple hot pepper ketchup.
Oh, okay, that sounds fun.
You can discount some of the jars if you need to, and take them home to her.
Crazy cum. I mean, Ben, you're known for your crazy combos, but these are all available in deli. We should say you can buy them in deli.
You can buy them in deli.
Use the code go to deli and you get 20% off.
if you had to come up with a little dish out of all those little things, you don't have to use all of them, Phil, and you can bring other things to the party.
Well,
where's your head going?
I think probably the one thing that I might just park to one side. Not that I absolutely love it. Is sorry, Ben, that's nothing personal. But I can't quite see I'm going to make that happen.
Very nice Muhammad though, Ben.
But I think the beans, and I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with this. Whether this gets sliced and melted into a pan. Or whether you just scrape a little bit out of the skin and so that it can kind of dissolve into something. But I mean, the beans and this is what this is the dish.
Yeah.
But I would then say it can a big beautiful flat plate of beans spiked with this sausage. To give it the flavour, and then brought to life with a good
couple of drizzles.
With a couple of drizzles, yeah.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
I'd
be happy with that.
Go-to deli dish by the wonderful Phil Howard.
And they're yours to take home, Phil. So you can
stay for your wife. She'll be happy with more jars.
I'm going to make it and take a picture and send it to you.
Yeah, we would love that.
That would actually be amazing.
Back with smouldering.
Or maybe just a little video, 5-second video.
I'm quite a lightweight when it comes to heat. It's getting better as the years go.
But these items are incredible, and they are mostly exclusive to Deli. So you can go on the Deli website or click the link in the bio if you're listening and watching, and you get 25% off. I was wrong. It's not 20, it's 25.
25.
We've gone up 5% just in a matter of moments. Phil Howard, you should put in the code GoToDeli with a double L, we should say. Phil Howard, you've been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And we could have done 4 or 5 more hours. We barely scratched the surface of your incredible career. But, hopefully you can come back for a part 2. I mean, we are trying to put together, this is a bit of an exclusive, a round table with John Williams, Adam Byatt, and yourself. John's in, Adam's in. Adam's going to host it at Trinity. Are you in?
I'm in.
No,
I'm in. I'm in.
He's
yeah.
That's how you do business.
I think John Williams, I'm just ashamed that his name hasn't come up in the conversation because I just think he is. If you want to go and have a truly great meal, go to the Ritz.
Different gear.
It is the real deal. I've been a few times and it's just spectacular.
Yeah.
We're going to finish up by asking you, what's your go-to 3-course meal?
Go-to 3-course meal. I think my go-to 3-course meal. I think I'll probably.
And by go-to, we mean sort of desert island, but we can't say that because.
I think I would. I think I'd probably have to. I'd go pretty classical. I'd go a massive, great pile of langoustines, large langoustines, probably just boiled, and then eat them just when they're on the cool, a bit like a lemon tart when they just get to blood temperature.
Yeah.
With mayonnaise. Then I think it'd probably be a tomahawk on the barbecue with green salad, some roasted ceps, and might just leave it at that. Probably.
Yeah.
Then I don't know.
This famous sweet tooth.
Yeah.
What are you going to finish on?
Probably something lame like a chocolate fondant with some vanilla ice cream.
There's nothing lame about that.
There it is: prawn cocktail, steak, and black forest.
Cheese afterwards. We'll give you that.
I'm normally too full by the time I get to cheese. I love cheese. I do love cheese, but I don't often indulge in it because I use lots in cooking.
Yeah.
I do love cheese, but I don't often sit down and eat much cheese.
You wouldn't go for the Grand Assiette de Fromage at Chez Bruce or something?
No, I wouldn't. I do that on a Saturday lunch. That's when I tend to
slice of Comté.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, sit down and just have loads of stuff.
Yeah.
One of those kind of meals where you end up actually
lunches.
eating about 10,000 calories of pate and cheese.
Yeah.
You convince yourself you've had
3
nothing.
baguettes.
Yeah, you can have a big supper.
Just a little snacky lunch.
Yeah, little snacky lunch.
Snacky lunch.
Phil Howard, you've been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us that
Joy
time.
to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's sadly all we got time for. We should say, click the link to get the wonderful ducks, the wild ducks, which Ben so beautifully put
and
together.
maybe a tomahawk.
Or maybe a tomahawk.
Well,
They've got the best meat in the country. And also, use the code GoToDeli to buy all these wonderful goods. And we're going to get a video off Phil. We're going to force him, or a photo of the dish he creates over the next couple of weeks, whenever he has time. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, we have another podcast which comes out every Thursday called Mise en Place, where we talk to the top chefs, including your protege, Aaron Potter, Jan, a lot of other people in the kitchens. That's only audio, so you can subscribe to that in the link below. Phil Howard, what song do you want us to play you out with?
Oh, it's got to either be a bit of Bowie or a bit of reggae, one of the two.
Oh.
Starman, come on, let's go there.
Yeah, nice.
Starman.
Oh,
Phil, those are your
nice
go-tos.
finish.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure, thank you.
Thank you so much, Phil.